of President Clinton not doing anything about Rwanda at the time and allowing it to take place?
I was against. I mean, a problem from hell obviously documented sort of just how President Clinton didn't even call a cabinet meeting for the entire 100 days of the genocide, insisted on the withdrawal of peacekeepers, refused to pay for radio jamming, which would have blocked the radio that was being used not only to propagate the hate, but also to broadcast the names and addresses of potential victims who were getting away. I mean, it was an all-systems failure, but President Clinton was at the helm of that failure, and I think it's an American outrage, and I think President Clinton himself has made that plain, that it's the greatest regret of his presidency.
We're talking to Samantha Power. Her earlier book was called A Problem from Hell, America and the Age of Genocide. Her latest book, Chasing the Flame, Sergio Vieira de Mello and the Fight to Save the World. Timor, he presided over it for 2.5 years between Indonesia's occupation and East Timor becoming independent. The issue of dealing with, as you said, the most powerful countries on earth, and that's as effective as the UN can be. The United States not turning their back on East Timor through the years, but actually funding the Indonesian military, training the Indonesian military, arming the Indonesian military in this genocide that took place in Timor. Whether it was the Republicans, Gerald Ford, or the Democrats, Carter and Clinton, Bush as well was in there. What about that? Not looking away, that wasn't the issue. It was actively supporting those that were killing the civilians in Timor.
I agree. I mean, complicity, support, as you say. I mean, people like you, and there's an amazing advocacy community in this country for many, many years that tirelessly worked to try to not only stave off, as you're suggesting, or what I've written about in the past, sins of omission, but sins of commission. But, you know, then you get to that bind in 1999, which is the UN diplomats broker a referendum agreement. The Timorese come out and vote again. They don't read the fine print, which says when you vote, you will maybe declare independence or you will vote for independence, and then the Indonesians will burn your country down, and then we'll decide at that point whether or not we protect you. They didn't read the fine print. So then you came to that moment of, okay, the states have turned their back on what the Indonesians have done all these years. Now the Indonesians are burning down East Timor as they were in September 1999, October 1999. What do you do as a global community? And countries with soiled hands, like Australia, like the United States, like Portugal, a former colonial power in the region, came together and said, okay, we have to support a multinational force to get rid of the Indonesians.
I actually interviewed Sergio de Mello about his time in Timor as we stood outside the United Nations the day the flag of the newest nation in the world was raised, and that was the flag of the Democratic Republic of East Timor. Sergio de Mello, of course, headed the UN mission in the transition from Indonesian occupation to independence.
Thoughts and emotions. To see that flag flying on First Avenue in front of this building is very, very important to me. As you know, this is the end of a long and painful, sad saga. The fact that East Timor today has been admitted as a full member of the United Nations is the true culmination of efforts over centuries, not just the last 2.5 decades. And it's also no reward to all of those who attempted to support the East Timorese in their struggle. Last but not least, let me say that as new UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, to be here today after having tried for 2.5 years to build new democratic institutions based on the rigorous respect of human rights is also an inspiration for the future. And last but not least, an encouragement to continue to stand by East Timor in consolidating all that they have achieved with our support in the last 3 years or so. In particular, women. The right of women, their right to enjoy fully their role in society, and something that, as you know, we promoted while we were in East Timor, and that I will continue to support very strongly from my new post in Geneva.
That was Sergio de Mello as he stood outside the United Nations on the day that The United Nations celebrated the new nation, Democratic Republic of East Timor, and raised the flag. Do you think he would have ever become the Secretary General if he had lived, if he had not died in the truck bombing of the UN compound in Iraq?
First of all, it's just heartbreaking to see the footage. There's very little footage of him out there, and for him, Timor was the culmination, was where he got to bring all these years of experience into the fore and actually be in charge. And paradoxically, you know, if you work for the UN, you are dependent on the member states, and you need UN unity behind you if you're going to do your job. And so Timor had that. The Security Council actually came together, wasn't divided as it is over Kosovo. So that gave him wind in his sails when he was there. But the flip side of it was people also left him alone. So he actually had the chance to be autonomous and to use his judgment and his discretion, didn't have the member states meddling. And do I think he would have become Secretary General? I don't see how a UN that is struggling to modernize, struggling to keep up with 21st century challenges, could have done without Sergio at the helm, done without someone who knew the institution inside and out, and yet somehow managed both to be able to appeal to countries in the developing world, have the trust of developing societies, post-colonial societies on the one hand, but also of heavyweights like the United States and Russia and China, where he spent a lot of time on the other. I think he just was one of those, he keeps wanting to say was one of those rare global figures that could convince people of his good faith, could convince people of his commitment to some set of universal principles, and could even make people patient with him and his need to play politics here and there. They would give him the benefit of the doubt. Even if you didn't agree with him tactically, you felt he was tilting too much toward China or too much toward the United States, you knew it was all from the standpoint not of advancing U.S. interests or Chinese interests, but of just trying to figure out how to enhance civilian protection. So whether, I mean, I think it was Asia's turn, and Asia certainly is in a hurry to assert its clout in the international system. So I think inevitably on the post-Kofi Annan cycle, it would have been an Asian leader. But right around now, we'd already be asking, you know, with a relatively lackluster Secretary General, are we ready? Do we really want to give this guy a second term, or can we make our way to somebody who really knows an awful lot about an awful lot?
Samantha Power is a senior foreign policy advisor to Senator Barack Obama and his presidential campaign. Her latest book is called Chasing the Flames, Sergio Vieira de Mello and the Fight to Save the World. And that does it for our broadcast. Democracy Now! Produced by Mike Berkshire, Hugo, Aaron Mate, Angelique Comet, Jeffrey Hagerman, Steve Martinez, Nicole Salazar, Robbie Karen, Mike DeFilippo, Miguel Noguera, Peter Curries, our engineers. Also special thanks to Becca Staley, Hugh Grant, Samantha Chambly, John Randolph, Kieran Krug Meadows, Rockhamp Penny, and Vesta Godars. Our website is democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for joining us.